When they delivered the dying alien woman to Dr. Chen's laboratory in chains, he felt something break inside him, and the first thing he did was remove every restraint and tell her she was free. "Sir, you know what this is about," Lieutenant Marcus said stiffly, as two burly security officers entered the lab, dragging a limp figure behind them. "This Veyrani specimen will aid in our understanding of their kind's vulnerabilities." Dr. James Chen turned away from his workstation and fixed Marquez with an implacable gaze. His eyes hardened beneath the wire-rimmed glasses that had framed them for years. "Does she understand what specimen means?" Dr. Chen asked, his voice low but clear. "She is not a piece of furniture or a toy. She's someone who has suffered unimaginably." The lieutenant's expression didn't change. He was used to dealing with recalcitrant scientists more concerned about moral dilemmas than national security. "She will be treated according to standard protocol," Marcus replied coldly, gesturing for the guards to place Aelith on a lab table nearby. "You have your assignment, let's not waste time." James watched as they placed chains around her delicate wrists and ankles, securing her to the table. The sight of this was almost too much to bear. She was gaunt beyond recognition, with translucent skin stretched tightly over bones that seemed far more prominent than any Veyrani. When they delivered the dying alien woman to Dr. Chen's laboratory in chains, he felt something break inside him, and the first thing he did was remove every restraint and tell her she was free. James approached Aelith as the guards were about to secure her further with metal cuffs designed specifically for Veyrani anatomy. He held up a hand firmly. "Stop," James commanded, his voice steady but undercurrents of steel. The security officers paused mid-motion, exchanging glances before turning back to their superior officer, Lieutenant Marquez, who stood nearby with arms crossed over his chest and an annoyed expression. "What's your problem?" the lieutenant snapped at Dr. Chen, as if it were a waste of time to ask when he could already tell James would refuse such orders outright. "You know exactly what my problem is," replied James calmly but firmly. "'Tis not just another sample for study. She's someone who suffered from the same brutal fate that all Veyrani are facing." Lieutenant Marcus sighed heavily and pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration before turning back to face Dr. Chen. "Listen, I understand your concerns," he began reluctantly, "but this is a necessary step for both our research needs and security purposes." "And what about her dignity?" James countered sharply, pushing past him towards Aelith, who was now lying still on the table with eyes tightly closed as if to block out everything around her. He knelt beside her and placed his hand gently over hers that were shackled together at her side. "Look," Marcus began again, but this time he was interrupted by one of the guards who tugged lightly at Aelith's arm in an attempt to move her onto a nearby stretcher while maintaining their grip on her chains. At the touch, she flinched violently, with wide unseeing eyes, staring straight ahead, as if looking past them into some distant and disturbing vision only she could see. "Wait," James said urgently, reaching out and pushing back the guard's hand. "Stop touching her." James stood up now, facing Marcus squarely while keeping an eye on Aelith, who was shivering uncontrollably under his protective gaze. "No one touches her unless I say so," he stated firmly to both Lieutenant Marcus and the guards. Marcus stared at James for a moment before sighing again, this time with resignation rather than frustration. "You have 30 minutes, after which we take over," he conceded, knowing that every moment wasted was another minute closer towards their deadline, or even worse yet, failure of compliance with government mandate. The lieutenant nodded sharply, then turned on his heel to leave the lab space, leaving behind a trail of tension as he walked out accompanied by one guard, while the second lingered nearby watching James intently before reluctantly stepping away too, but staying close enough still maintain control if needed. James moved swiftly around Aelith, quickly unfastening her chains from the table and placing them aside. His fingers were gentle yet firm on her wrists as he worked to remove each restraint one by one with an air of reverence for what she represented beyond just being a specimen, a sentient life form suffering needlessly under human control. James murmured soothingly, speaking softly into Aelith's ear when his hands freed both sets of chains from around her wrists and ankles. "You're safe now, no one will hurt you here." Aelith's eyes fluttered open briefly, but immediately closed again, as if it took too much effort to keep them open for long. "You're free," James repeated louder this time, making she could hear him over the sound of his own heart racing in his chest at seeing her condition. "No one will treat you like a prisoner here." He helped Aelith sit up slowly, supporting her fragile body with both hands beneath her shoulders as he guided her from the table to a more comfortable chair beside it. Once she was seated, and no longer visibly trembling under his care, though still very much in shock, backed away, slightly giving her space, while remaining close enough should any sudden movement or threat arise. "Do you understand me?" James asked gently, kneeling down once again before Aelith, but now facing towards rather than bending over her, as if giving her a chance to look him squarely in the eyes without feeling too small beneath his gaze. Aelith's silver eyes opened wider under this encouragement and met James's warm brown ones for perhaps the first time since arriving. The moment stretched on indefinitely between them before Aelith seemed almost surprised by how real it felt, nodding slowly as if processing what was happening after so long being treated merely like a thing. James gave her another small reassuring smile, then rose to his feet again, turning toward some drawers near where he worked moments ago, opening one and retrieving medical supplies necessary for examining someone in such poor health condition, but wanting no unnecessary procedures without consent, which they couldn't get from Aelith just yet due to trauma-induced catatonia state she seemed currently residing within. "We'll start by making sure you're comfortable and stable," James said softly, beginning the process of basic examination, though moving slowly and carefully, speaking as he worked so nothing would frighten or hurt her further. "I know it's hard to believe, but this place is different. We treat people here." As hours passed, Aelith gradually became more aware of James's presence around her, and less fearful, allowing him access when necessary, like letting go of arm briefly during blood tests, only long enough that needle could pierce skin, then holding limb gently afterwards until pain faded away. While healing began slowly with each passing day, so did the rebuilding of trust between them, despite initial skepticism about intentions behind such care initially extended. Days turned into weeks as Aelith started to show signs of regaining health, her skeletal form beginning to fill out slightly and silver eyes gaining back some life, though still wary at times due lingering trauma. James continued treating her with utmost respect, never once losing sight importance, maintaining trust despite pressures from officials wanting more immediate results regarding study. Eventually came point where Aelith could walk without assistance, even if it was short distance between rooms inside lab, but also moment when James realized his feelings had grown much deeper than merely protective towards this frail yet resilient being who'd found solace under roof he offered freely. He knew too that fate had placed them together for reasons beyond simple scientific curiosity. Chapter 1 ended here with Aelith now standing beside Dr. Chen, looking healthier, but still very much damaged from past experiences, ready to face new challenges ahead as they both navigated uncharted territories of compassion and understanding in a world where such virtues were often scarce yet desperately needed most. The days turned into weeks as Aelith's physical state began to improve, though her mental and emotional recovery remained fragile and slow-paced. Dr. James Chen continued his meticulous care without any pressure from outside parties, determined that she would heal not just physically but also emotionally. James often found himself working in the same room with Aelith, surrounded by books on xenobiology and alien languages, which he hoped might help him better understand her species' needs beyond medical necessities. He had started learning some basic phrases from Veyrani texts when possible, hoping that one day she would feel safe enough to converse again. One morning, while James was busy examining Aelith's blood work under a microscope, there came an unexpected change in the air. Aelith began moving independently around their shared living space. She walked unsteadily, but with determination, from her bed to the small dining table where he had left breakfast, taking slow bites of food and returning it later when she was full. James watched this silent process without interfering until Aelith finally reached out for a water bottle placed beside them on the floor before drinking cautiously. As she did so, James noticed that her hand trembled less than usual today, perhaps even more significant. He noted how quickly her eyes scanned their environment now compared to those first weeks. "She seems like she's getting braver," James mused aloud one day after Aelith had taken another step towards normalcy by sitting under the sun streaming through an open window on the far wall of their lab home. It was then that Dr. Chen decided it might be a good idea for her to try taking more steps alone, starting with small ones. Over the next few days, James encouraged Aelith to explore further within safe confines, perhaps venturing into different rooms or simply walking back and forth between them. He watched carefully, but didn't intrude unless asked. He noticed that when she did need help from him physically, it was clear in her body language, making any assistance feel more like a mutual understanding rather than an imposition. One evening, as the sky darkened outside, Aelith remained seated beside James, where both had been working on separate tasks. For once today, there were no interruptions or sudden movements, causing frighteningly quiet companionship and mutual respect growing between them over shared silence, punctuated occasionally by sounds of gentle typing from his computer keyboard or pages flipping softly as they read. It was in this peaceful moment that Aelith finally spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Why, kind?" James looked up sharply at the unexpected sound, yet felt no surprise. He had been anticipating such a question for some time now, though never knowing exactly when it would come or how she might phrase it once spoken aloud. "Because you deserve it," was all James could say in response, feeling both humbled and honored by this first vocal expression from Aelith since coming under his care. Their eyes met briefly across the small space between them before settling again upon their individual tasks, with renewed sense of purpose now that communication barriers were breaking down further. As weeks turned into months, James noticed subtle changes in how Aelith interacted not only with him, but also her environment. She started spending more time looking out windows rather than shrinking away from sunlight filtering inside. She ate meals without hesitation, and even began trying to communicate through gestures whenever possible, nodding yes when offered food or drinks, shaking head no if asked questions beyond understanding scope. One afternoon, after another successful blood test was completed successfully, with Aelith cooperating fully despite initial fears surrounding needle procedures, James found himself reflecting once again upon why he had chosen this path. He thought about all those who criticized his decision to treat a Veyrani refugee as anything other than property, how others believed in extracting every last bit of knowledge before discarding them coldly for next specimen awaiting examination. But there was no question whatsoever inside James's mind regarding what mattered most: Aelith's life, the spirit slowly coming back from brink of despair into light of hope once more. And despite skepticism among peers and authority figures alike about long-term outcomes or benefits arising from his methodical approach to care versus brute force methodologies favored elsewhere within broader scientific community, he felt no doubt in correctness of path chosen. He knew beyond shadow of a doubt that Aelith deserved kindness, not just because it was humane, but also fundamentally essential for recovery process itself. Without genuine affection and respect shown toward her throughout these initial critical stages post-trauma, chances she would ever regain full health, let alone trust again, were slim indeed. So while others might debate ethics behind giving such creatures dignity through compassion-based approach rather than cold analysis under microscope lens devoid of empathy entirely, James never doubted rightness or necessity thereof. It was simply who he was, a man dedicated not just to advancing knowledge, but also ensuring humanity's better angels shone brightly, even when faced with dark realities like those confronting Veyrani species now. With each passing day, Aelith grew stronger both physically and emotionally, despite ongoing struggles arising from past traumas still lingering deep within. Yet alongside progress came new uncertainties, two questions about future beyond immediate healing phase, concerns over whether trust gained here truly solidified or remained fragile construct built upon shifting sands of doubt. James sensed these anxieties in quiet moments shared between them now that verbal communication had opened doors previously closed tight against world outside this sanctuary space created together. He watched Aelith's eyes flicker with worry as she faced uncertainties ahead, knowing full well that answers weren't always clear within reach, yet committed nonetheless to helping find pathways forward regardless. In one of these quieter evenings, under starlit sky visible through open window, James took a momentary pause from reading up on latest research findings regarding Veyrani biology and turned towards Aelith, who sat quietly beside him. She seemed lost in thoughts, looking out across dark landscape beyond their lab home, face illuminated only faintly by moon light reflecting off glass surface. "Hey," he said softly, breaking silence gently, as ever so careful not to startle or intimidate her further at this tender juncture of emotional vulnerability. "It's okay if you're worried." Aelith glanced back towards him briefly before looking away again, though no longer shrinking from eye contact entirely now that she had more control over such exchanges. "I am," came whispered reply after slight hesitation, voice barely audible above rustling leaves outside caught by breeze passing through open window panes. "What comes next?" James considered his words carefully, knowing profound impact they might have given Aelith's history and current state of mind. He reached out hesitantly, offering hand palm up towards her, as if inviting rather than forcing any kind of closeness. "There's no easy answer," he admitted honestly yet gently, feeling importance of transparency even amidst uncertainty. "But what I can promise is this: we'll figure it out together." Aelith's gaze returned fully to his face now, eyes searching for truth behind these soft spoken assurances before slowly nodding once more in acknowledgement. James offered another reassuring smile, then extended arm further slightly inviting her closer without pushing anything onto unwilling participant. After brief hesitation, Aelith did lean forward, tentatively placing hand lightly atop James, their fingers briefly touching as she sought comfort in familiar gesture rather than imposing strangers' touch on sensitive skin barely healed from past injuries. Days progressed into months, with each step taken together marking progression towards healing beyond physical scars left behind by traumatic experiences. Trust built gradually between Aelith and Dr. Chen, solidifying bond formed through mutual respect and compassion shown throughout difficult journey thus far. Yet even as progress continued forward, there remained lingering shadows cast long ago, which threatened to overshadow newfound light of hope emerging brightly ahead despite best efforts made daily towards nurturing growth both within lab home walls and beyond into wider world outside awaiting discovery. Should brave souls choose path toward recovery rather than retreat from challenges posed by uncertainties facing fragile future indeed. The chapter ends here with the foundation laid strong for deeper explorations of connection, trust, and mutual respect growing between Aelith and James as they navigate an uncertain yet hopeful future together. The Veyrani thrive on emotional connection, a fact that was initially daunting to James, but ultimately transformative for Aelith's recovery and his own journey as well. With each passing day in their shared lab home, subtle changes began to manifest in her demeanor and appearance. One morning, while James was reviewing documents at the kitchen table cluttered with papers and notes, he heard a soft sound from outside, the rustling of leaves stirred by the gentle breeze that often swept through during early hours. Glancing up, his eyes caught Aelith's figure moving cautiously toward their garden plot beyond the large glass doors leading to an outdoor terrace. James set down his pen and pushed back his chair slightly, watching her approach with a mixture of awe and hope growing in him. She carried herself differently now, not just physically, but emotionally too. There was confidence returning within those once fragile steps. Aelith, he called softly as she neared the door to access tools from inside for planting seeds and tending to sprouting plants already beginning to thrive around them. Wait a moment. She paused mid-step, turning her luminous gaze toward him without fear. Dr. Chen, would you like me to assist? James asked gently but firmly, standing up now fully intent on lending whatever support she needed. Aelith hesitated briefly before responding with a nod more confident than in the past weeks and months. Yes, came her clear reply, as if understanding their daily rhythm better. I can start preparing soil for new seedlings. Together they moved to prepare the garden plot James had been nurturing alone since Aelith's arrival. The act itself was therapeutic, not just physically, but emotionally. Sharing tasks that once were daunting or overwhelming now felt manageable within her grasp again. As weeks turned into months under this careful regimen, James and Aelith developed a routine around their shared activities, waking up early to start work in the garden, where she found solace tending plants, then returning inside for more focused research sessions which involved intricate studies of Veyrani biology, alongside his own areas of expertise. With each passing day, he noticed improvements beyond what medicine could achieve alone. Her skin regained its luminosity under James' care and attention, no longer the pale, translucent hue reminiscent of illness, but a warm radiance reflecting inner strength now flourishing within her frame. Her eyes, too, began to brighten, that dull grayness slowly giving way to silver depths, full of life again. It was as if each day brought another layer of Aelith's personality, emerging more fully. A smile began to become a regular feature on her face, often accompanied by the sound James now treasured, laughter like crystal bells echoing softly around their home. Whenever she found joy in simple moments, such as discovering which plants thrived best under certain conditions, or when observing how different nutrients affected growth patterns. These were breakthroughs not just for research purposes but profoundly personal ones too. One evening after dinner, they sat quietly side by side watching stars emerge through the glass ceiling of their living quarters while discussing recent observations made during garden work and lab analysis sessions. James felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing he contributed significantly toward her recovery, alongside his dedicated efforts towards understanding Veyrani biology more deeply. "James," Aelith said softly, breaking into the contemplative silence between them, I feel different." He turned to look at her with curiosity and concern evident in his brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "How so?" "I can't explain it entirely," she admitted hesitantly, searching for words that perhaps never had existed before in this context. The concept of feeling whole again after enduring such profound losses both personally and culturally. "It's like pieces I thought were broken forever are starting to fit together once more." Her gaze met his steadily, now filled with warmth rather than past weariness. James smiled warmly at her response, placing a gentle hand over hers resting on the armrest between them, a gesture of comfort he hoped conveyed understanding and encouragement. "You're not alone in figuring things out," he reassured quietly. "We'll keep moving forward together." Days turned into weeks, which then cascaded seamlessly into months, under this new rhythm formed by mutual respect, care, and unspoken promises kept silently between them day after day. During one particularly serene afternoon, amidst blooming flowers and fresh sprouts stretching towards sunlight, with encouragement from both gardener and biologist working side by side once more within their shared haven, James felt the realization hit him like a wave of understanding. He had fallen in love with Aelith, not just as someone needing care, but deeply connected on every level possible given circumstances shaping their lives together. "Thank you," she murmured softly during one such quiet moment under the shade provided by lush greenery around them, glancing over at James, who was meticulously inspecting soil composition before proceeding to plant another batch of seeds. "For everything." He paused momentarily, looking up from his task with an earnest expression capturing genuine emotion within warm brown eyes behind glasses reflecting sunlight filtering through leaves overhead. "Aelith," he began softly yet firmly, conveying both gratitude and affection now tangible in every word exchanged between them. "Thank you for trusting me enough to let us walk this path together." She nodded slowly, her silver gaze meeting his with no pretenses remaining, only pure acknowledgement of mutual journey undertaken towards healing and growth beyond mere survival. With each passing day, under starlit skies visible through open windows, framing tranquil scenes both outside their lab home walls and within hearts, finding solace amidst challenges faced head on rather than shirked away into shadows lingering long ago, James realized profoundly that caring for Aelith had shifted far beyond professional duty. It was a profound connection built on unwavering commitment to supporting someone's journey toward wholeness, something he never imagined possible, yet cherished deeply now it became reality. The chapter ends here with the foundation firmly laid strong for deeper explorations of their evolving relationship, trust, and mutual respect growing between Aelith and James as they navigate an uncertain but hopeful future together. Years had passed since Dr. James Chen first brought Aelith, a skeletal and traumatized alien refugee, into his life. Time seemed to blur together in moments of quiet observation, watching as spring turned to summer, autumn to winter, each season marking another chapter in their shared story. Yet within these cycles, the most profound changes were found not outside, but inside Aelith's transformation from a creature on death's edge to a radiant being filled with life and purpose. On one particularly serene afternoon, James stepped out of their lab home into an explosion of blooming flowers that greeted him like old friends. It was during these moments he felt closest to the natural rhythm around them, a connection rooted in his work as both a biologist and a caregiver. Aelith often joined him now, not just for companionship, but because she too found solace and peace within nature's embrace. "Today seems different," James remarked, glancing at her as they walked side by side through their garden. The words were simple yet carried an undercurrent of the deep bond that had grown between them over countless hours spent together in quiet reflection and hard work. Aelith nodded slowly, a small smile playing on her lips, a rare expression from someone once so withdrawn and silent. "It does," she agreed softly, her voice carrying the weight of years now filled with hope rather than despair. "Today feels like we're marking something new." James felt his heart swell at those words. He knew Aelith had faced more challenges in these past few years than most beings would encounter in a lifetime, losses so profound that recovery seemed impossible from an outside perspective. Yet here she was, standing resilient and ready for whatever came next. "Do you think we've learned enough to venture out again?" James asked gently. The sanctuary of their home had been crucial during Aelith's initial recovery, but now there were new fronts to explore in the ongoing fight against xenophobic policies and prejudice toward aliens like her back on Earth. Aelith tilted her head thoughtfully, eyes reflecting deep wells of understanding that spoke volumes about how far she'd come. "I believe we have," she replied firmly. "We've built a foundation, Toj. They're a place of safety and truth." James smiled warmly at this. It wasn't just the scientific advancements they had made or the articles co-authored under his guidance. It was more profound, mutual respect, trust, and sense of responsibility towards each other's well-being that formed an unbreakable bond. The days continued to pass in a serene blur where every moment held significance. The way Aelith now moved with confidence through spaces once foreign or frightening, her voice carrying authority when speaking up for alien rights at meetings. James watched all this unfold with pride and wonder, wondering how far they had come from those dark nights of holding hands while she fought nightmares. One such evening found them sitting in the living room, surrounded by books and research papers spread out across a large wooden table, working late into the night. As always, the soft glow of lamps cast long shadows against walls adorned with both terrestrial plants and alien specimens studied closely for answers about Veyrani biology and their mysterious ability to recover from near-death states. "James," Aelith began softly after an extended period of silence where they had worked side by side without speaking much, "I'm grateful." He paused mid-drawing on a diagram detailing a new hypothesis about the biochemical mechanisms behind emotional bonding for Veyranis. Looking up at her with warm brown eyes reflecting gentle affection and understanding. "For what?" he asked tenderly. "Everything," she clarified simply yet profoundly. Her voice held no pretenses, no, only honest gratitude wrapped tightly around trust built through countless nights of care, days of shared work, under skies both earth-bound and alien in nature. "You've given me more than you could ever know." James smiled softly back at her, placing a gentle hand over hers where it rested on the table between them. The gesture was one of silent support, now deeply ingrained into their routine, a promise carried forward through touch. "Aelith," he began quietly yet firmly, "thank you for trusting me enough to let us walk this path together." She nodded slowly in response, her silver gaze meeting his with no hidden meanings, remaining in pure acknowledgement. The look spoke volumes about the depth of mutual journey undertaken towards healing and growth beyond mere survival. These moments felt like fragile blooms opening under careful nurturing from both gardener and biologist, working hand in hand towards something greater than themselves. Each small step forward represented years spent breaking down barriers between human and alien, between caregiver and patient, transforming roles into equals bound by shared purpose and deep-seated respect. As days blended seamlessly into months, within this new rhythm forged through mutual efforts, under starlit skies visible even from the comfort of their home, or amidst bustling cityscapes, during daytime activism for alien rights, James realized profoundly that caring for Aelith had shifted far beyond professional duty. It was a profound connection built on unwavering commitment to supporting someone's journey toward wholeness, a path he never imagined possible, yet cherished deeply. Now it became reality. The chapter ends here with the foundation firmly laid strong for deeper explorations of their evolving relationship, trust, and mutual respect growing between Aelith and James as they navigate an uncertain but hopeful future together. James Chen sat in his cluttered office, surrounded by papers and research notes sprawled across every available surface. It was late afternoon on a crisp autumn day, and he had been poring over data from their recent experiments when the door suddenly burst open. Director Cole strode into the room like a thunderstorm rolling through dry plains. "Dr. Chen," Cole said tersely, his eyes scanning James's work area with thinly veiled disdain. "I need to speak with you." James set aside his pen and stood up slowly. "Of course," he replied calmly. "What can I help you with today?" Director Cole's face darkened as if the question had been an insult. He straightened the stack of papers in one hand, clearly agitated but trying hard not to show it fully. "I have received reports that your alien specimen is thriving," he said through clenched teeth. James nodded, understanding where this conversation was headed before Cole even finished speaking. "Yes, she has," James confirmed with an air of certainty. "We've been working on a new therapy regime." Cole's eyes narrowed further, as if the thought alone that an experiment should be thriving under human care enraged him deeply. "Thriving is not what you are supposed to do with it," he snapped harshly, waving his hand dismissively at James' desk full of research and charts. "Dr. Chen," Cole began, but a sharp knock interrupted them before the man could finish his tirade. James called out from behind his door, "Come in," not even looking up as Aelith walked into view. Her presence filled the room with an aura that contrasted sharply against Director Cole's grim demeanor. She was radiant, luminous, and vibrant, her silver eyes catching light like stars amidst soft strands of dark hair framing her face. Aelith stepped forward carefully but confidently towards James's side, without a word exchanged between them. First, their body language spoke volumes about mutual understanding built over years together. "Director Cole," Aelith greeted him formally with an almost imperceptible tilt of head, respect, an acknowledgement given freely, though not obligatory. Her voice carried quiet strength, betraying none of the horror from her past, but showing only clarity now present in every syllable spoken here today. Cole stared at her for a long moment before breaking eye contact to look back at James with disbelief evident on his face. "You gave your specimen human rights?" The accusation hung heavy in air filled suddenly tight as tension coiled around them all. "I didn't give Aelith any rights," James corrected firmly, placing hand gently yet protectively over hers where it rested lightly by her side now. This action seemed to remind Cole exactly why he had come here today, demanding what was technically his property back. "She's not a specimen," James said steadily, voice unwavering despite the pressure mounting visibly within room around them. "She's my colleague and friend." Cole scoffed loudly at this statement, like bitter laugh escaping him. "Colleague? This thing is worthless research material," he barked aggressively, now standing closer to Aelith than intended. "Worthless?" James shot back, his own temper flaring up despite best efforts to remain calm during confrontation. "You were going to use her when she was barely alive-y, and because you thought there could be something valuable in a corpse." Aelith's eyes snapped to Cole's face then, cold fury sparking briefly before settling into icy resolve once more. She turned slightly toward James, but kept herself centered between them, without moving fully behind him. James continued quietly, now with voice dripping scorn. "After she was given weeks to live and expected nothing in return, you thought you could just take her away like that?" Cole sputtered, unable to find words quick enough to refute accusations. His face flushed a deep shade of red before he finally managed to stammer out threat instead. "You'll get this through proper channels if it comes down to court," Cole said coldly, his eyes narrowing dangerously as they flicked back and forth between James and Aelith, who remained silent but vigilant beside him. "We aren't going backwards on our mission, no matter what." James felt hands tighten around his own slightly beneath his protective stance towards her. He squeezed reassuringly before letting go to face Director Cole directly once more. "And if you try?" he challenged evenly, eyes unwavering from the other man's intense gaze across desk and space between them, now tense with unspoken tension. Aelith's lips curled upward into cold smile, then sharp and clear enough in defiance to match heat of argument unfolding around her. "Try," she said simply but definitively before turning slightly back towards James once more, her silver eyes reflecting determination as well as trust toward man who had saved her life through compassion instead of cruel lab experiments. For a moment, no one spoke or moved, as if the air itself held breath, waiting for next move in standoff playing out here. Cole's hand hovered near phone clip to belt line, but didn't actually dial. Call, he threatened, would make James and Aelith shared glance, understanding that neither was backing down despite threat hanging overhead. Finally, Director Cole took a deep breath, as if resigning himself temporarily, or maybe hoping for different outcome through negotiation rather than force. He stepped back slightly from confrontation zone they had been locked in seconds ago, but still loomed threateningly close enough to remind all involved danger very much real here today, regardless promises exchanged previously between researchers and refugee. "Very well," he conceded grudgingly, instead, voice hardening with resignation mixed bitter taste of being outmaneuvered thus far. "They'll be watching, Chen, and if you push us too far." James nodded sharply once more, without backing down stance, though remaining respectful outward toward authority figure standing there now, leaving room in case other man needed to save face or retreat before situation escalated further into full legal battle neither wanted nor prepared for yet. "Understood," James responded firmly, but equally respectfully, eyes meeting Director Cole's squarely while keeping close eye on Aelith, who nodded once more sharply back towards them, both confirming silent agreement and promise held here, now between all three participants of this crucial moment, pivoting potential path forward or backward depending outcome struck in balance act walking tightrope right then. As door closed behind retreating figure of Director Cole, silence filled office again, but differently than before. Tension still lingered, palpable weight hanging over scene as aftermath of confrontation settled around them all, now grappling with implications unresolved yet critical to next steps moving forward for everyone involved, especially James and Aelith, whose journey together continued forging ahead amidst storms past and present pressing need, future peace and safety found. The chapter ends here. The public tribunal hall was a cavernous space, its high ceilings supported by massive pillars that seemed to stretch into infinity above. The air buzzed with anticipation as people milled about, waiting for the proceedings to begin. There were scientists in starched lab coats and reporters armed with cameras, all converging on the central stage where two figures stood side by side: Dr. James Chen, his scholarly appearance calm yet resolute, and Aelith, her radiant presence a stark contrast to the frail woman she had once been. As they took their places behind an ornate podium bearing microphones, James felt eyes boring into him from all directions. The weight of expectation was almost palpable in this room filled with influential figures who would determine not just his fate, but that of Aelith's entire species. Director Cole stood nearby, a scowl etched on his face as he observed the proceedings, clearly unwilling to give up the fight. The tribunal chairman cleared their throat loudly, drawing attention back to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," they began in an authoritative voice designed to command immediate respect, "we are gathered here today for one of humanity's most significant moments." They paused dramatically before continuing. "Witnesses will present evidence that could change our understanding of life itself." A hush fell over the crowd as a large screen behind the podium flickered to life. First came grainy footage from months ago, a skeletal figure with translucent skin and dulled eyes being wheeled into what appeared to be Jameis' office at the research facility. Her nameless status was clear in how she was handled, without dignity or care. The video progressed rapidly through time until it showed Aelith now standing tall beside James, her vibrant silver eyes alight with intelligence and life, her luminous skin glowing under the lights of the hall as she gazed at the room full of faces. The transformation was breathtaking, an almost magical reversal from skeletal to radiant that left many in attendance gasping openly. "Witness testimony will now begin," declared the chairman. It was James who stepped forward first, his voice steady but filled with emotion when he spoke. "Aelith's arrival at my facility marked one of the most challenging and transformative periods of my life." As he continued to speak about her initial condition, how she had been expected to die shortly due to lack of care or connection, paused every now and then, glancing towards Aelith, who stood silently beside him. Her silver eyes shone with pride for James's courage in sharing their story openly. "I was assigned a task by the government," James continued after another pause filled with significance, as much as words left unsaid. "But I refused to see her merely as property or specimen." His voice rose slightly, conviction clear. "I wanted nothing more than what she deserved: dignity and freedom." Turning his attention back towards Aelith again momentarily before returning it outwardly once more, James added, "She had no home anymore, nowhere safe where anyone cared about her living beyond mere days ahead." His tone softened yet remained firm as he spoke of how they worked tirelessly to heal not just physical ailments, but also the deep emotional wounds inflicted upon this fragile being. Every day was spent learning what she needed most: to be seen and loved. Then it was Aelith's turn, stepping forward now with quiet dignity that seemed all the more powerful for its absence of fanfare or dramatic gesture. When she spoke, Her voice carried effortlessly across room despite seeming so small next to towering figures around them. Before I came Hera, there was nothing left in me except emptiness and pain. Her words were stark yet somehow hopeful as memories unfolded through quiet recitation. I had given up on living, Aelith admitted softly but clearly into microphone, her gaze never wavering despite sharp intakes of breath from audience members grasping implications behind such statement. Yet turning slightly toward James now with a small smile playing lips for first time throughout testimony, he saw something in me worth saving. She paused momentarily before continuing, voice trembling, only barely noticeable, but telling nonetheless. Every day he treated me like I mattered, she said plainly but passionately, at same time into air buzzing around her. Aelith's eyes flickered briefly to James once more, thighs time with unmistakable gratitude and affection in their shimmering depth. San then turned back outwards, toward tribunal members, listening attentively. He asked nothing of me, except that I live. As she spoke about how kindness had transformed not just physical appearance, but entire spirit within her being over years spent together growing stronger each day because of connection shared. James reached forward, gently placing hand on lower part Aelith's back, giving silent reassurance through touch as well verbal support provided before. Tears welled up in some corners of room as story unfolded further, revealing how far they'd come from those initial grim days to present moments standing united side by side facing world that wanted more than just their testimony, but also judgment passed upon them, both regarding future prospects. Moving forward now, all decisions made hinged critically on outcomes struck here today. When Aelith concluded her statement, she glanced at James again briefly before turning back towards tribunal members and addressing everyone assembled. You saw this and still treated me like I mattered. Thank you for that. James squeezed Aelith's hand gently once more as he stepped forward now to close his part of testimony with final words directed back toward gathering crowd. She is the healthiest Veyrani ever recorded, he said simply but proudly, and scientists call it a medical miracle, but shaking head slightly dismissing notion implied by such title, because for him and her it was something far greater and simpler than that. We just called it love. The tribunal room fell into silence once more as profound nature of testimony settled over everyone present. After moments filled with quiet reflection, Chairman finally broke reverie, speaking up loudly to announce verdict reached after thorough deliberation based entirely upon evidence presented, combined credibility witnesses shared regarding their unique situation. The court finds in favor of Dr. James, Chen and Aelith, they declared emphatically into microphones ringing through hall, and orders that no further action be taken against them for past actions. Crowd erupted briefly into murmurs, followed by applause breaking out slowly across room as realization set firmly regarding implications ruling had just handed down. Director Cole was visibly disgraced by outcome of proceedings, glaring daggers at James and Aelith before storming off stage in apparent defeat despite attempts made initially to thwart what ultimately transpired today. As they exited tribunal hall hand in hand, amidst celebratory murmurs from those around them, James turned toward Aelith with a smile that spoke volumes about years spent together learning each other intimately. Let's go home, he suggested softly, but firmly, looking into her eyes mirroring same sentiment. Aelith nodded wordlessly in agreement as they made their way out of building towards a waiting vehicle waiting to take them away from this place where painful memories lingered, yet also where new possibilities now opened up thanks solely courage and compassion shown by both throughout ordeal face thus far together. Back at home, the atmosphere was warm and celebratory. Friends and colleagues had gathered in support, bringing flowers and gift tokens of congratulations for their victory won with grace under immense pressure from all sides. In quieter moments, after festivities died down somewhat, allowing reflection space amongst celebrations shared around them, James found himself standing beside Aelith, who held out a photograph showing frail figure she once was before transformation took hold, thanks to love offered freely without expectation in return. He accepted it gently and studied the image carefully, stark contrast between past self and present one, telling story far beyond words alone could ever convey. "You saw this," James murmured softly toward Aelith, looking up into her eyes, now reflecting back at him with depth of connection shared uniquely theirs across years spent growing together in mutual understanding of what truly mattered most deep down where it counted. "And still treated me like I mattered." She smiled gently but firmly at that statement, nodding head slightly, confirming agreement fully present between them both regarding value placed upon each other's existence, extending beyond scientific curiosity or mere survival mechanics alone. "You always mattered," James continued softly yet strongly, his voice filled with conviction and love as he held Aelith close now. "You just needed someone to remind you." Aelith's silver eyes glowed warmly in return, reflection of sentiment shared equally between them, confirming bond that had only grown stronger despite, and perhaps partly because of challenges faced along way. The next day, amidst the morning light streaming through windows into their home office area, where such conversations often took place over years spent together learning each other intimately from different worlds, yet finding common ground in hearts capable of understanding true value inherent within individual worth, irrespective origin or circumstance encountered throughout existence, shared now fully embraced between them both. James proposed a question to Aelith with genuine interest reflected clearly through eyes looking directly into hers. "Would you like to marry me?" he asked quietly but sincerely, holding her gaze intently, as if searching for answer, not just in words spoken back at him now, but also underlying sentiment carried by unspoken truths exchanged deeply between them over time spent together, growing inseparably linked both emotionally and spiritually beyond any boundaries imposed by biological or cultural differences separating worlds from which they came. Aelith's response was immediate yet filled with profound significance of moment shared fully present between them. "Yes," she said simply but firmly, her silver eyes reflecting love back at him without need for further explanation regarding depth feeling now held within hearts intertwined since they first met under circumstances neither could have predicted nor planned for themselves. The wedding ceremony that followed was a private affair conducted with simplicity and grace. Friends and family gathered to witness the union of James and Aelith, celebrating not just their love, but also the medical miracle they had created. Thorough testament to what compassion can achieve when it crosses species boundaries. At the altar, under soft candlelight casting warm shadows across faces etched by time spent journeying through challenges faced alongside one another, James took Aelith's hand and slipped her ring onto her finger with a kiss that spoke volumes about all he felt for this radiant being standing before him. In return, she placed an identical band on his own finger, a symbol of unbreakable bond forged amidst trials tested over years spent, proving true strength lies not in dominance, but rather mutual respect grounded firmly within genuine care shown freely without expectation. beyond simple desire to see loved one thrive and flourish under watchful eye that never wavers, despite obstacles encountered along the way. The ceremony concluded with heartfelt vows exchanged openly among witnesses gathered there, each word carrying weight of promises made between them, now officially recognized by all present as cornerstone upon which future built firmly together would rest amidst hope for continued peace and prosperity shared uniquely theirs, due to journey traversed side by side from point near loss towards ultimate triumph achieved against seemingly insurmountable odds. The chapter ends here, with the couple's wedding vows symbolizing not just their personal commitment, but also a broader message about the power of compassion in bridging gaps between vastly different lives and species.